two, one. What is up, everyone? It's the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 57. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Find us on other podcasting services. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. And joining me, as always, the Stat King himself. What is up, Michael? What's up?
What is going on, y'all? It's an exciting time in the sports world. I know football season is over, but we got a trade this morning involving a pretty notable quarterback. We have some other talk about, obviously, in the basketball respect. That's what we're going to be doing today. Today we're going to be doing a little NBA buy or sell stock sort of game. You choose, I guess, I did 4 because I didn't have time for a 5th, but I choose 4 to 5 storylines, players, teams to buy or sell stock in. And so
Is everything all right? I can't hear you. Uh-oh. I think we're having some technical difficulties here. I think Michael went frozen on my end. But just to kick back off of what he was saying, we're going to do, just in light of the stock stuff that happened a few weeks ago now, we're going to do a game where we buy and sell stock in players, in teams. He basically just explained it. But we're also going to talk a little bit of golf today. There's some interesting storylines going into this week, but also going into the main part of the season as well. We're just getting into the phase where guys are really starting to try and prepare for Augusta and for the rest of the majors. I'm going to pause this recording, and when we see you again, Michael will be back in here. Give me 1 second. All right, we are back, everyone. So to continue introing some of the stuff we're going to cover today, we're going to do some golf stuff. Like I said, there's some interesting storylines to cover going into the major season, which is, if you didn't know, golf has 4 majors throughout the year. Those are the most prestigious tournaments, the biggest tournaments that every player has to prepare for. So the first major is coming up soon in April. So this is the time of year where everybody is rounding out their games, getting ready for it. But for this week specifically, we're going to pick the winners for this week at Riviera, which is, I wouldn't say it's a huge tournament, but it has a interesting outcome every single year, it seems like, because it's such a nice course. But on top of that, we're also going to get into some stuff with Jordan Spieth, who is a former Masters champion who hasn't won in almost 3 years. Almost 3 full years, because he won the 2017 Open. That was his last win. So we're going to get into what may be wrong and can he bounce back from this. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to close with college basketball. We're going to make our predictions for some of the games tonight and also for Saturday, this weekend, all the marquee matchups. Because we have this is late February now, and this is all conference stuff. This is where it really heats up. So I'm really excited for what we got for y'all, but we're just going to get into this.
Good.
Right. So beginning with our NBA stuff, the first thing that I'm buying stock in is I'm buying stock in the Damian Lillard for MVP train. And this episode was pushed back a couple of times. So just for a little bit of context, I actually wrote this down for this episode before these last two games where he hit game winners. So it's even more of a trend now to hop on that bandwagon. But nonetheless, I'm buying stock in on that train with everything that he's been doing. Not just all the clutch shots. It's just the level of leadership that he displays in wake of all the injuries that they've had. That's really impressive to me.
Absolutely. Since you bought stock, I'm going to sell stock. Before the season, obviously, there was a notion that this year's draft class, these rookies that were coming in, this was one of the weaker draft classes of the past decade, past couple of years. You can go ahead and sell that notion right now, because right now there are 5 rookies averaging over or 12 points per game or more. I'll name them for you. LaMelo Ball looks like a star, as we knew he had the potential to be. He's been playing really well as of late. He's entered the Charlotte Hornets starting lineup. He's been the most impressive rookie. We know about James Wiseman, the second overall pick of the Golden State Warriors. He's been hurt as of late, but he's also putting up impressive numbers. And then you have other guys like Anthony Edwards, who's come on as of late, the shooting guard for the Timberwolves. He's a notable name for that team, even though they're struggling at the bottom of the Western Conference. You have Tyrese Halliburton for the Sacramento Kings. He's putting up good numbers. And then a name that not a lot of people talked about coming into the draft was Emmanuel Quickley, one of the guards for the New York Knicks. And the Knicks are sitting there right around 500 in that Eastern Conference playoff race. He's also averaging about 12 points per game. So you look at those 5 guys, and it even goes beyond those 5 guys. You have names like Saddiq Bey. He's putting up decent numbers for the Detroit Pistons. Even guys like Devin Vassell, guys that were in the lottery that are contributing to their teams right away. And so the notion that this draft class was weak or not good at all, you can just go ahead and get rid of any of those notions right now, because there are a lot of guys that are not only contributing, but a lot of these guys are a lot better than we expected them to be right away. So that's my first sell for this segment.
Another thing I wanted to add about that is I think circumstance has a lot to do with it as well. I think if you look at a guy like Saddiq Bey, who you just mentioned, he was at Villanova, I believe, right? I think someone like that, he's someone who would kill it in a tournament setting. Like some of these guys that were under the radar during the regular season didn't have that chance to perform on the bigger stage of March Madness since it was canceled last year. So I think that played a role in this class being underrated as well. But yeah, I'm buying stock in something that's connected to that. I'm buying stock in Anthony Edwards being a future All-Star. He's been under the radar, but if you look at his style as a player, he's just a hooper. He's not going to make any excuses. He's not going to ask questions. He just goes out there and does his thing. People criticized him for some of the things he said pre-draft. They questioned whether he loved basketball. But I don't think people realize that he doesn't necessarily – I don't think what he said really discredited his love of basketball. I think he just loves other things as well. And just because he does that doesn't mean he's not working as hard or whatever. Like that's just a preconceived notion that people have about athletes having other interests, but that's another conversation for another day. The reason why I think Anthony Edwards is a future All-Star is he already has the foundation to be that player. Like if you look at his arsenal of moves and how he gets to the bucket so easily and how he moves around the court, it's easy to see that if he adds a little bit more polish, he can easily be a 25 point per game scorer, because the shots that he's missing are open shots in a star sense of the word. But he's just missing them because he's a rookie and he still needs to work on his game a little bit more. But I think he'll get there in 2 years. I think he'll be there.
Okay. I'm going to buy stock in the Phoenix Suns as a contender to get to the Western Conference Finals. Now, I did some of this prep like on Monday, so I had to update some of these notions for you. But not only can they beat the lesser teams, the lesser competition, but they've also been really good against teams above 500. They are 7-5 against teams with a record currently above 500. So that's the fourth best such record in the league. So they've proven to you that they can beat some of these better teams and compete with some of these better teams in the league. Second of all, Chris Paul and Devin Booker, they've both been absolutely terrific. Now, before the loss to the Suns, before the loss to the Nets, you can't lose to yourselves. Before they lost to the Nets the other night, due to some, late game heroics from James Harden, they were on a 6-game winning streak. And during that 6-game winning streak, Devin Booker was elite. He was averaging almost 29 points per game, about 6 assists, and shooting about 49% from the field, which is absolutely just insane. And it seems that wherever Chris Paul goes, the team just wins. I mean, we saw him obviously in LA. We saw him go to Houston. They won a lot of games. And now we saw him go to Oklahoma City. They won a lot of games, more than we ever expected them to. And now he's with a young team in Phoenix, and they're winning a lot of games. And I believe, I haven't really looked at the standings in the past couple of days, but they're like top 4, top 5 in the West. And when Devin Booker and Chris Paul are on the court together, the team has a plus 19.4 net rating, which is one of the best in the league. So, and then they're also playing defense. They're 7th in the NBA in defensive efficiency rating. So I just look at this team and they're picking up where they left off a couple months ago in the bubble, when they went 8-0 in the bubble games and just fell short of playing themselves in to the NBA playoffs. So I think, barring injury, of course, they should be a contender right now, at least, to get to that Western Conference Finals stage. I think they can do it. But the Western Conference is a gauntlet. You can have injuries. All sorts of things can happen. But right now, the way they're playing, watch out.
Right. And, I agree with that. But the thing that it's going to depend on is DeAndre Ayton. I think if you look at this team, they have a lot of versatility, especially at the forward spots. They've done a really good job of drafting and also picking up guys like Jay Crowder to fill in those spots. But at the center position, DeAndre Ayton has been he's been inconsistent defensively, and also there are times where you question his mentality and aggressiveness offensively, especially when he has mismatches. and he's not able to capitalize on those. But I agree with you. I think they're a contender to make the Western Conference Finals, definitely, especially with Denver having the struggles that they're having. I think they're an underrated team that can get there.
Right.
So my next thing that I'm buying stock in De'Aaron Fox, just in general. I think De'Aaron Fox, simply because of the organization that he's playing with, the Sacramento Kings, he's been under the radar for far too long. And I think pretty soon they'll be in the playoffs and he'll make his worth be known. He's averaging 24 this year on really good efficiency, and that would even be higher if he was shooting a little better from the line. So the crazy thing about De'Aaron Fox is he still has so much room to grow, and I think where he's at already as a defender and as a playmaker, I think with him and Tyrese Halliburton in the backcourt, I think the Kings could be a playoff team for years to come.
I agree. He's really good. I watched him a lot when he was at Iowa State. Obviously, I'm a big college basketball guy, so I watched a lot of these guys more in college than a lot of people that I know did. But yeah, I think the Kings sort of kind of underrated. Their young guys are sort of underrated. I mean, they got a lot of guys there that it's just the culture that really kills that team. So I agree. I think Halliburton's going to be really good, but we'll see. De'Aaron Fox is just a star. If it wasn't for so many good players in the West, he could probably make an all-star, or he could make an all-star team. That's for sure. But I'll get to my next one. I think the Utah Jazz will finish this season. Now, of course, this depends on injury, as the number 1 seed in the West. Now, I'm not saying that they can beat the Lakers in a 7-game series. I'm not saying they can even, beat the Clippers in a 7-game series. We'll have to see. Right now, they're playing too good. They're pushing too, if they don't see a way, they can. I don't see them slowing down anytime soon. First of all, their schedule doesn't get any easier. In fact, it gets a little harder. But they've already proven that they can beat the best teams in the league. They're 10-3 against teams currently above 500, and they just beat the Clippers. I think it was last night or the night before. So they're meshing. They're first in offensive rating. They're second in defensive rating. They're one of 2 teams, along with the Lakers, to rank top 5 in both metrics. They're on pace still to set an NBA record for 3-pointers made per game by a team. They're making about 17 per game right now, which is just incredible. They're showing no signs of slowing down. Now, I know the NBA All-Star starters will be announced tonight and the reserves will be announced later, but we assumed, and we talked about this on our last podcast, that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert will be All-Stars. They'll make the All-Star team. So they have 2 All-Stars. That's typically a recipe for this type of, regular season. And they're getting production from the bench, namely Jordan Clarkson. He's second in the NBA. And so there's the chemistry here that kind of reminds me of like the 2014 Spurs teams. They're moving the ball. They're playing really good team basketball. And all of the metrics, all the numbers say that if they can stay healthy, and now that we think that the Lakers will be extra cautious with Anthony Davis, And some of these other teams in the West are kind of struggling. You mentioned the Nuggets, the Clippers will be up there, but they tend to load manage some of their players, so we don't know if they really actually care about the regular season. We'll have to see. But I just think the Utah Jazz are going to continue this, and I think they'll end up as the top overall seed in the West going into the playoffs. Again, you can't predict injuries, but as of right now, that's what it looks like it's going to be. So,
Right. I think so too. I think they can realistically finish number one seed, and uh, even in past years, the number one seed isn't necessarily the best team in the conference in terms of regular season stuff. So I can definitely see that happening. But for my next buy sell thing, I'm selling stock in Mike Budenholzer as a top tier coach. So here's my thing. Um, he's very stubborn. He fails to make adjustments when needed. They're going down this basically the same path that they have the last 2 years, which led to their offense being too simplistic and being exposed in the playoffs. They're going down that same path. They're not experimenting with Giannis at the five. They're not throwing him in pick and rolls like I thought they would. And I think it'll be detrimental to this whole team in the long run if they keep Mike Budenholzer as a coach, because I think they have a ceiling with him as a coach since he's not able to make the adjustments that are needed. But I don't know. I might just be overreacting and having recency bias. But even when he was coaching the Hawks in the playoffs, he almost lost in the second round to the Wizards in that year where they won 67 games. So him as a coach in the playoffs, I'm not very high on, and I think overall I'm selling that stock now in saying that in the next couple of years, I think the Bucks may consider moving on from him.
I can see that. I can definitely see that. You have Giannis and Chris Middleton. You've added Drew Holiday, and now is the time that you have to win, and you have to at least get to the NBA Finals. Something which they haven't really actually come close to doing. I mean, the closest they got was what, like a couple of years ago. But I mean, we'll see. You mentioned at the beginning of the segment Damian Willard. What he is doing so far this season is just absolutely insane. First of all, he's averaging 30 points, 6 assists on 50% from the field, 43% from three, and he's shooting 94% from the free throw line. So he's doing the same old Stephen Curry stuff that he's been doing for the past, 5 to 10 years. He has this Warriors team, a team that's been without James Wiseman, Kevon Looney. They've had some injuries. They don't have Klay Thompson, of course. We all knew that. And he has them, I think, 3 games above 500 and sitting in the Western Conference playoffs. And really, on most nights, he's the reason, and pretty much the only reason, that they're in games and have a chance to win games late. In crunch time, in fact, this is 5-point. These are games that are within 5 points in the last 3 minutes of the game. He's shooting 56% from the field, 70% from 3-point range. He's 12 of 12 from the free throw line in those situations. He only has 1 turnover in those situations. He's a plus 16, plus minus in those situations, and the Warriors are 7-4 in those close games. So they're winning close games. He's the reason for it. He's putting up huge numbers. And he's really having a similar season to the one where he won the unanimous MVP 2015, 2016. He's putting up those type numbers, and he's really carrying this team. I mean, last night, no Draymond, no Kevin Looney, no James Wiseman, no Klay Thompson, and the Warriors are winning games. So, and there have been games where the other guys on the roster, Andrew Wiggins, has had a couple terrible games. He's not getting much help, or at least much consistent help. And the Warriors are in the playoffs. There are a couple games above 500, and he's not showing signs of slowing down. I think the only thing that's going to slow Stephen Curry down is another injury. So I would buy stock in him for MVP right now. But, we all know that there are so many deserving candidates that he may not win it. But, we'll see. We'll see.
Right. And in a weird Russell Westbrookian kind of way, he definitely has an argument, especially if they end up in a 5th or 6th seed, something like that. He has a real argument just simply from the fact that there's been so much turmoil and change through their organization, and he's been the steadying hand that's run them through them all. But I'm just going to take a second to talk about the Warriors as a whole. Just their ball movement has not lost a step at all. Their system is still intact, and it took a few games for the players to really buy in and get used to the system, but they're clicking now, and it's really fun to watch. They're getting good shots consistently. Like even when shots aren't dropping, like as you said, he's not getting consistent help. They're getting open looks consistently, and they're breaking down every defense they play, it seems. So watch out for the Warriors. I think they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs, whoever they play. I think any team.
Okay, you call me the stat king. I'm looking on Twitter, and I saw this just now. The most 30-point games on 50% from the field, 50% from the three-point line, and 100% from the free throw line. So 50-50, 100 shooting splits. The most 30-point games on those shooting splits in NBA history. Stephen Curry has 76 of those in his career. The next closest player is Larry Bird with 50.
Wow.
So he is, I just find that mind-blowing. And then you have Dirk. He had 48 of those. KD has 41, and then MJ had 39 of those such games. So just amazing.
Right.
Just absolutely amazing. So I only did 4. Those were my 4. Buying stock in the Suns as a Western Conference Finals contender. I'm selling stock in the notion that this draft class is just not a good draft class. Just get rid of that right now. And I'm buying stock in the Jazz for the Western Conference Finals top seed, best team in the regular season. And I'm buying stock in Stephen Curry, both as just like a and in that MVP conversation. He buys and only one sell. If I had to sell stock in one more thing, I'd say I don't know what your opinions on this are, and I don't have a lot of prep prepared for this, but I'd say I'm not sure I'm ready to sell stock on them as a team because they've had some injuries. But the Boston Celtics, and particularly the supporting cast, players not named Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, I'm not sure I'm really super high on them right now. Now I know they've had injuries to Marcus Smart and such, but a couple of the rookie or younger players, Romeo Langford's been out. He was a contributor in last year's playoffs, I believe. But Kemba Walker has really been slumping since he came back from injury. They picked up a couple players in the offseason, the shortened offseason, Jeff Teague, Tristan Thompson, a couple veteran presences for that locker room. And the development of Robert Williams has really made that Tristan Thompson pickup look kind of I guess not worthless, but he hasn't really done much. And then Jeff Teague isn't really even in the rotation with guys like Peyton Pritchard, the rookie from Oregon, being in that, and then Carson Edwards, of course. So I'm just not really sure. Up until a couple nights ago, they had lost. They had lost 10 of their last 15 games, and they're 5-15 since Kemba Walker returned to the starting lineup. So I'm just not really high on the Boston Celtics, and I'm not sure I'm ready to sell stock in them as a contender as a whole, because I know they have a great coach. They have a lot of time to get things going again in the right direction. And, there's always time to go out and make a trade. We know Danny Ainge has a reputation of being aggressive at the trading deadline and stuff. And there's time to improve this team. But I want to get your thoughts on Boston, because they're struggling right now. And, aside from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who we think will both be all-stars, they're not really getting much production from anybody else.
Right. Boston's a real head scratcher, honestly. I think I definitely agree with you on selling stock on their ability to contend with this current roster. But like you said, they can still make trades. But with this current roster, this current build, the way it's set up, with the role players being who they are, I'm not high on it either. And it really just comes down to, I think they have a problem of lack of playmaking. If you look at Kemba Walker's strengths as a point guard, he's not really setting up guys. And what is he really doing when he's not scoring the ball at a high level? He's not defending. He like I just said, he's not that great of a passer, and he's certainly not going to be rebounding the ball at 6'1". So the value there, I think that's really pushing down everything else that this team can do, because he is the biggest contract on the team. He's the max guy. He's supposed to be the veteran, the steadying piece that whenever they need a bucket, you can go to Kemba. He can hit his step back. But if he's not going to be that guy, then that signing was a bust, and they're not going to be in contention. That might push back their timeline a little bit. So they have a few choices to make. They can either, one, be extremely aggressive, as you said, at the deadline and make some moves. There are some guys available, particularly on teams like the Rockets, or the Knicks might be selling later in the year, with some of those guys having higher value than they did at the beginning of the season. But they could either do that, or they could buy into their future and try to pick up the pieces a little bit and try to keep on going through the draft. But I don't like that path as much, because there gets to a point where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be too old to just be waiting on these rookies to get where they need to be. They're ready to win now, and their window is there. they just have to. It's just up to the front office to put the pieces around them, and right now it's not there.
Right. Did you have anything else you wanted to say? I've covered what I want to say for my NBA buy sell as of right now.
Right. I have one
If you
more.
don't have any,
I have one more. This one's about my
okay.
Mavericks. So I'm selling stock in Rick Carlisle being the long-term coach of my Mavericks. And this was a hard one for me because he's been the coach of our team for a long time, and obviously he's a good coach, but with where we're at, I don't think he's the right type of coach. Here's my reasoning. Rick Carlisle, he doesn't like to play young players. So what does that mean? He likes his vets that he knows what you're gonna get from them. They're not gonna make too many mistakes, but they're also, I mean, they are who they are. But what I'm gonna get at here is we got a guy like Tyler Bay in the G League and Tyrell Terry in the G League, and you got Josh Green sitting on the bench there. And I think this team could use some youthful energy, some Energizer Bunny type of play right now. And that's exactly what I thought we drafted Tyler Bay and Josh Green for, to be those defensive guys. I mean, whether they're going to give you anything offensively or not, doesn't matter right now. Just throw them out there for 10 minutes and let them just hustle for every loose ball and go get it. Sometimes I question how hungry some of these players are, because their spots are so concrete, and the hierarchy of the team is so concrete to where the players don't feel threatened. They're there and they're comfortable, and they feel good about where they are. And I think we just need a coach who is gonna put the young guys in and let them grow. That's just my take. I think with the team being as young as it is, we need to go all in to being young and playing fast and getting out in transition and doing all those things. And with Rick Carlisle, we just haven't done that. But it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. It might just be me being a little bit pessimistic about the Maverick season so far, but that's one of the main things that I've taken away from the Maverick season, is just that he's playing these veterans that aren't even necessarily better than what these rookies would give you, So.
Right. I really can't speak on that. Maybe I can give you more of my thoughts in a future episode. But I do see where you're coming from. I think it's important in today's NBA. Of course, player development is of the utmost importance right now. And you gotta move off your older guys and start to develop your younger guys to keep pace in today's NBA. And I think I'd have to do a little bit more research as to what the Mavericks have been doing as of late. I have watched a couple of their games because they've been on TV so much. But yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of the reasons that my team, the Spurs, are now looking really good. It's because Pop has moved off some of the older veterans, and he's playing the young guys, and they're developing right before our eyes. So I'm not sure. I probably wouldn't say I see Rick Carlisle being the coach of the Mavericks past the next 3 or 4 years, if Dallas doesn't end up getting to a Western Conference Finals or even a Finals in that time period. I think they have the necessary pieces. They might need 1 or 2 more pieces, but I think they have the talent to get there, and you don't want to waste away. And I know Luka's super young, but you don't want to waste away too many years of the Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis prime, like when they're in their primes. You don't want to just keep treading along like you are. So I can definitely see where you're coming from, but maybe I can speak a little bit more in detail to that topic in an upcoming episode.
Right. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I guess I don't know. I guess I got a little too ahead of myself.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, yeah, that's gonna do it for that topic. I think that turned out really well, and definitely, guys, just let us know if you want to see more of that, because we can definitely do something like that with football. We could do some of that stuff with really any sport. This is one of those things that works for anything. So definitely let us know if you like that little segment there. But now we're gonna get into our golf stuff. Have y'all ever thought about starting your own podcast but thought it would be too complicated? If your answer to that question is yes, let me tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to start a quality podcast. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from any device. And on top of that, Anchor is owned by Spotify, so you have access to a full library of sound effects, background music, transitions, and even full songs that you can add in. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it will hook you up with sponsors so you can make money on your podcast. It's literally everything you could ever need to start a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. And I think we should start off with this Jordan Spieth conversation. I have a little bit of prep done. I don't have any stats, but this is what I've been seeing from him these past couple of years. I think the struggles that he's had. Well, actually, before I get into it, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on who Jordan Spieth is, because I know some of y'all might not be golfers who listen to this. So first of all, Jordan Spieth, he came onto the scene in 2013 as a 19-year-old rookie and won a tournament where he holed out a bunker shot just like on the 18th hole, just like the craziest way you can win a tournament. And then from there, he had an incredible run of 4 or 5 years where he was winning majors and he was just dominant. And then he had that collapse at the Masters in 2016, I believe, where he put it in the water on hole 12 3 or 4 times and lost his 4-shot lead. And from there, he hasn't really been the same. He won the Open in 2017, but that was his last win up until now. So that's a little bit of context. But as for what I think is going on, I think it's a combination of two things. One, I think that he's just having a mental block. So for all of you that aren't golfers, golf is one of those sports that is 90% mental. It's basically you're playing against yourself, and you're playing the course, but you're also playing against yourself in a way. There's so many emotional ups and downs within every round, and coincidentally, there's also ups and downs in your game as well. And those two things are kind of connected. So wherever your head is at, if your head is not in a good place, you won't be able to perform the same way. So the reason for me to believe that he's having a mental block is he's doing things that are not up to his skill level. It's not something that is because he's not skilled enough. It's something that he's just doing because he's just off. So he's missing like 2 or 3 foot putts here and there where he can have like a 10-footer and he'll make it, but he'll have like a 2-foot putt, 3-foot putt, and he'll miss it, which is just so wild to me. considering that the putter is the best part of his game. And then the second thing is the driver, hitting the fairway, especially on the level of the PGA Tour, where the rough is extremely thick and it's basically penalizing if you go in the rough consistently, because you won't be able to get as close to the hole, and it's just a snowball effect. He hasn't been able to get in the fairway consistently, and that reared its head at Pebble on Sunday last week, where he couldn't hit a fairway to save his life. He was missing everything, and the good news is he has shown signs. He like I said, he was in contention on Sunday last week. He had the lead going into Sunday. But the biggest thing to get your confidence back is you got to get to a place to where you can do it under pressure, so that you know that you can do it. Once he has that one round where he breaks through that barrier, I think he's going to be back to playing like himself again. But that's kind of my feeling based on some of the experiences that I've had with golf, because the mental side is really just it's so important.
Right. Now, for those of you who are new or going to be new to Raw Prospect, Emmy knows a lot more about golf than I do. He'll be the guy to really, I guess, trust more than me, I guess, on these golf topics. But I do know some, and so I'll just say this about Jordan Spieth. First of all, it's good that he's playing. He's being competitive and giving himself a chance to win these tournaments again. Because for the past couple of years, it seemed like he hasn't even been in the running, much less at majors, but just in regular tournaments in general. He's actually back-to-back top 5 finishes at the Phoenix Waste Management Open a couple weeks ago, and then last week at Pebble Beach. That's the first time he's had back-to-back top 5 finishes in 3 years. Not just a win, but back-to-back top 5 finishes, which is something he did pretty regularly early on in his career when he was on that run winning those majors, 2016 and 2017. But yeah, exactly. Since a couple years ago, when Danny Willard eventually won, he seemed to have this
We're having some technical issues again. Michael, you there, man? Can you say that whole thing again? I don't think we got that. We were having you cut out a little bit. Just about we were at where you mentioned Danny Willett and Jordan Spieth had a weird blank, and then it just completely froze up. So
I apologize, guys, for the technical difficulties. It's been a weird week here in the Austin area and just Texas. Some historically, I guess, Texas area, there are power outages everywhere and stuff, and my Wi-Fi has been up and down. So I apologize for any technical difficulties, but yes, you mentioned that he's had this mental block, and I was just trying to get at that ever since that collapse at the Masters, just reiterating that it seems the pressure to get back to that level of winning is having an effect on him. Right now, after the past couple of years, he's dropped all the way down to 92nd in the official world golf rankings. And he really hasn't turn things around until now. So I'm just hoping that, and everyone, like we know, likes a good comeback story. And, he hasn't had, necessarily the fall of, say, a Tiger Woods, but he hasn't been good at all the past couple of years up until now. And it'd be nice to see him eventually break through here soon. And I think he can do it. I think he can do it. He just has to, he had 54 hole leads the past 2 weeks. He just has to find a way to not make those mistakes that have been haunting him on Sunday ever since that collapse at the 2016 Masters or whatever it was. So, but I just want to mention last week at Pebble Beach, an average of 4.2 million viewers tuned into the CBS final round coverage of that tournament. That's a 19% increase from last year's Pebble Beach program, and it's the most watched regular season PGA Tour event on any network in 2 years, discounting majors, of course. So that just shows you, like, people want to see him win, and I'm no different, but it's just a matter of getting back to that mentality of being confident on some. It seems he's lost some confidence, but you can speak to this more than I can, and just not making those mistakes on Sunday.
Right.
So
It's one of those things. We hear Brooks Koepka. He had this quote where he said, only about 10% of the field are players that has to beat. Everyone else will beat themselves. So that's a pretty telling quote to how professional golf works. Really, Jordan Spieth, he's one of those guys that's beating himself right now. So he just has to get back to where he was at. But I think that's it for that. It's a whole lot of generalities, guys. I'm sorry. That's just kind of how golf is. It's really, it's hard to be factual about what's going on in someone's head when really we don't know. It's really a whole lot of just speculation, but it's just based on what we're seeing.
right.
So I hope this is good for y'all to hear still. But we're going to get into a little bit of predictions for this week's tournament at Riviera. I believe it's called the Northern Trust, unless they changed the name again. I'm not sure. But nevertheless, it's still the same course as it always is, that Riviera. And a little bit of background is just that Riviera is just known for being one of the toughest courses on the greens that these players see on tour. And that's why a lot of these players like to play this tournament, because they find these greens comparable to what they see at Augusta, being very undulated and fast. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. So typically the winner at this tournament is someone who is getting close to the hole. If you look at proximity to the hole, that's someone who will win at Riviera, because you got to be able to get close to the hole, and particularly underneath the hole where you have an uphill putt to give yourself good looks and be in contention. So for this tournament, I look at a guy like Dustin Johnson to win, or even last year it was Adam Scott, but someone who is a good ball striker and hasn't necessarily made that breakthrough to win, but he's a top 10 machine, is Tony Finau. I could see him breaking through at an event like this. Obviously, it's hard to gauge how well he'll do since the tournament just started. I haven't even looked at the leaderboard yet. This is just my projection for the week, just off nothing. So
Right.
we'll see. Those are my two picks. I don't
Yeah.
really have a whole ton of picks, but I don't know.
I didn't do a whole lot of prep on this. I've done a lot of prep on the NBA and the college basketball stuff. That's kind of the meat of this episode. But I will say real quick, now that football season's over, and although there are going to be a bunch of storylines that we're still going to have to talk about, and we're going to have to go deep into the draft stuff here in the next couple weeks, starting in the next couple weeks. We are looking to expand our horizons. So, I think if we want to grow our audience, we're going to have to expand our horizons beyond just basketball and football, even though those are like the two main sports that we cover on this podcast. Sometimes talking golf, it's going to start to be, I guess, spring training starting up. So maybe we'll talk baseball every once in a while. Some of these other sports that we don't talk about as much, we're going to be talking about more. But anyways, a guy that I was looking at, and of course, you can't ignore the likes of Dustin Johnson. I mean, he's I believe, let's see, he's posted 3 wins, a 3rd place, a 6th place, and an 11th place finish in his last 9 worldwide starts. That's just absolutely insane. So I think he's missed the past couple of weeks with some sort of nagging injury. I don't know exactly what it is or some problem, but he's back this week. But a guy I was looking at was Patrick Cantlay. I don't obviously know much about him, but what I do know is he has a good history at this particular event. Let's see, he debuted at this event in 2018. He tied for 4th, and then he followed that up with 15th and 17th place finishes. So he's been top 20 all 3 times he's played this event. And last week, he tied for 2nd at last week's AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and he was 3rd at his start before that at the American Express. So he's getting close. He's been in contention the past couple events he's played in. And I think last week he ranked 2nd in strokes gained approach and 1st in strokes gained tee to green. So he's been putting up good, I guess you call them numbers per se.
Right.
And he's had a good history playing at Riviera, and he's gotten close. He just hasn't broken through yet. So I'd look at a guy like him to possibly win this week. But you can't ignore the guys like Dustin Johnson and everyone else playing. And then obviously everyone's going to have their eye on Jordan Spieth. So we'll see what happens with that. But
right, and
as you said, go ahead.
Right. And you mentioned the stats that he had good history at this event. Golf is a little different than other sports where having good history at a course holds a little bit more weight, because as a golfer, having a good psyche and a good feeling at a course, it plays a big role in being able to play really well.
Right.
So it's not like football where the circumstances are going to be different and all that. All the team as a whole, it's going to be different in different spots. Obviously, the circumstances are doing is a different year, but going back to the same course that you play well at definitely helps a golfer's psyche. So I think I just needed to clarify a little bit there for some of the non-golf fans out there. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap up the golf segment for now. We're going to get back to it once the Masters get closer and closer here, but we'll keep checking back in with golf. I think there's, I think
not even that.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about the Players Championship, which is like in early March. So that'll be soon. That's like golf's, they call it the 5th major. At least some people do. So we'll talk about that coming up here soon. And then obviously the majors after that. So more golf than usual coming up on the Rob podcast. But we have some college basketball games that I have been waiting all week to talk about, but there's been, some postponements. So we're not getting, the whole slate of games this week, but this is still one of the better slates of games we've had in like a weekend or a week so far this season. So let's just go ahead and jump in to this. And I'm a big college basketball fan. Emmy, he watches some, but not as much as I do. So we'll just try and get through what we can here. The first matchup, one of 4 matchups between ranked teams. We have the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Wisconsin Badgers. Did you want to start on this, or you want me to get us started?
You can go right ahead. I'm looking at some of the things I want to stay still. So
okay. So when I look at this matchup, the first thing you have to point out is Iowa is elite offensively. However, they're very liable and bad defensively. So you look at their offense, they're first in the country in offensive efficiency with a rating of 127.6, which is off the charts. And obviously, Luka Garza plays a big role in that success. And they're a great three-point shooting team as well. They're 10th in the country in three-point field goal percentage at about 40%. And they don't turn the ball over. They take really good care of the ball. They're first in offensive turnover percentage, at 13%. So they take very good care of the ball. They score at a high rate. They have a bunch of high-level scorers like Luka Garza, who obviously is going to be in the running for and will probably win the Naismith Player of the Year award when it's all said and done. But their defense is bad. It's really bad. You look at Wisconsin, they're going to be a factor. They struggled they're going to be a factor in the NCAA tournament, and the reason I know that is because they're one of the more experienced team in the country. Their offense is struggling as of late. They've also kind of struggled defensively, and that's kind of their identity. But they're a veteran team. They're actually 18th in overall experience, an average of 2.39 years of experience among their players. So they're experienced. They're good on defense. They've struggled on offense as of late. They're playing some tough competition, but I do expect them to be a factor in the NCAA tournament because of their experience, the veteran presence.
Is it frozen again? Yep, it's frozen again. I don't really know what to say. Yo, Michael, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties, y'all. We're obviously Texas has had a really weird weekend, like we mentioned earlier. So it looks like he disconnected. So I'm just gonna give my pick for the game, and then I'll get him reconnected again once I'm done with my prediction. So Iowa at Wisconsin. Obviously, he had just mentioned most of the key factors of the game. For Iowa, that being Luka Garza, he's just coming off a game where he went 2 for 8 from the field, and just struggled overall. Couldn't buy a bucket. Wasn't even hitting from the line either. But their team still won that game, which is pretty interesting because they're known for being very reliant on Luka Garza's scoring. But this is a well-rounded team, and I think that's well-rounded team offensively. Sorry. And I think that's a underrated part about their offensive game. They're a team that can score in a lot of different ways. But then Wisconsin, they're definitely a lot less. I don't know what the right word is. Flashy, just simply from their style of play. A lot of lower scoring games that they've been a part of. They're a team that likes to grind out low scoring wins. As Michael said, they're a really, really good defensive team. But as for picking this game, I'm gonna pick Iowa, simply from the fact that I think that they'll be able to get enough stops. And I don't know if Wisconsin will have the firepower to keep up with Iowa, their offensive attack. I think in the first half, early in the first half, I think it might be a little bit low scoring, but once Iowa gets into a rhythm offensively, I don't know if Wisconsin, is going to be able to keep up with the firepower that they have. So that's going to be my prediction. I'm going to get Michael back in here. So I'm going to pause this real quick, and when we're back, we're going to continue our picks here. So, yeah. All right, y'all, we are back. Again, sorry about the technical difficulties. It was really inevitable for this episode. Honestly, we even expected some of this coming in, but we want to get this episode out to y'all, so we're gonna just keep on going through this cycle if we have to, and finish this out. But as you heard, I picked Iowa, but I'll let Michael finish up giving his pick, and then we'll move.
It's just Iowa has more offense, and the name of the game right now, late February, early March, going into the tournament, is to score. You got to be able to score, and so until Wisconsin figures some stuff out offensively, I can't really take them as seriously as I would, given their experience. They're not going to get blown out, I don't think, because they're good defensively and they have experience. They're a veteran team, and those teams typically are still competitive. But Iowa's just on another level offensively, and I think they're so good offensively that the fact that they're bad defensively really doesn't matter as much as it would some of these other teams that we're going to talk about. So we both agree that's a good game. If you're not doing anything tonight, that's a good game. It's going to be nationally televised on ESPN. It is tonight. That's a good game to tune into. So you can not only get a good look at both these teams, but Luka Garza is a fun watch. So go ahead and tune in if you can. All right. Two Big 12 matchups on Saturday, big ones. We have Texas Tech at Kansas. I guess I can give my little spiel. Texas Tech, when you look at this team, they're stout defensively, like every crispier team every year it seems, and they force turnovers in bunches. So this year they're 18th, they're top 20 in defensive efficiency. They've dropped off a little from that national championship run a couple years ago, but they're still really good, and they force a lot of turnovers. They force turnovers on 24.7%, almost a quarter of opponents' offensive possessions. And offensively, the backcourt has been great. The transfer from Georgetown, Mac McClung, has been a must-watch, and Kyler Edwards as well has been really good. So, but Texas Tech is a smaller team. Kansas has struggled here in the middle of the season, but they've won a couple games in a row. They've kind of gotten back to looking like Kansas again. I think they will be in the tournament, but they do have a tough schedule here coming down the stretch. They got to play Texas again. They got to play West Virginia. They got to play Texas Tech. So they have a couple tough games here remaining. In order to win this game, on Saturday against Texas Tech, they're going to have to dominate inside with their big center, David McCormick, because Texas Tech doesn't have a player above 6'8" in that starting lineup. So they're going to have to play inside out, create open shots on the outside by playing through the post. Because Dave McCormick, when he's not in foul trouble, has been really good. He's been a really good player for Kansas, averaging 13 and 7 on 50% from the floor and over a block per game. But I do think that due to their defensive prowess, Kansas sort of has struggled with some loose play on the offensive end, turning the ball over. That plays into Texas Tech's strength. And for that reason, and due to inconsistent guard play for Kansas, I'm picking Texas Tech. I think it'll be close, and Texas Tech will pull away late.
Right. That's actually who I picked as well. Texas Tech, like you said, they're very similar to most Chris Beard-led teams in terms of their defensive prowess and their style of play. It feels like they're always led by guards who are really good off the dribble and guards who are really aggressive defensively. And that's been the case again this year with how many turnovers they forced, as you mentioned. But I don't know much about Kansas this year. I'm gonna watch this game, and I'm gonna be able to tell you more about what I think of them after this game. But I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched them this year, and I think just based on that, I think I have to choose Texas Tech because that's the team that I'm aware of. I did a little bit of prep on Kansas, and it's hard for me to really gauge them off of the stats because, like you said, they've been very inconsistent. So I'm just gonna have to just eye test, see what I can get out of that, and I'll get back to you on Kansas. But for now, I'm picking Texas Tech.
That's okay. If you're going to start to watch teams more in detail, now is the time. Still have time. Kansas has a lot of tough games here coming down the stretch, so this would be a good way for you to kind of gauge, I guess, what you think of a lot of these teams that you may not watch as much as I do. Okay, the next game, West Virginia at Texas, Saturday, 2 p.m. It's going to be on ABC. Now, the last game between these two teams, because as you know, in the Big 12, there are 10 teams. You play every team twice, once on the road, once at home. And that's kind of been shaken up this year due to some of the postponements, but you get the point. In the last game, Texas at West Virginia, Texas won on a late three by Andrew Jones. It was actually a game-winning three with like 2 or 3 seconds left. He shot it in the corner. They beat him. I was happy. Texas was 10-1 at the time. They've struggled here as of late, but they've gotten back to some of their principles in the past couple games, and that's why I'm picking them to win this game. It's hard in the Big 12. It's tough. I was going to pick originally Texas to beat OU on the road to avenge their loss at home against OU, but since that's been postponed due to weather, I'm now picking them to beat West Virginia. Now, the Andrew Jones story is just incredible. I'll try to go a little faster because I know I'm kind of ranting. I think he needs to be first team all Big 12 when the season's all said and done. He's been that good. A lot of people are aware of sort of his background, his story, but they don't know the full story, what he's been able to overcome. So I just want to get into that real quick because it's relevant to this game because he was the guy that hit the shot to beat West Virginia last time. He was actually a highly touted 4-star recruit out of MacArthur High School in Irving, Texas. During his senior year, he averaged over 30 points per game, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists in his senior year at MacArthur, and was named a McDonald's All-American and was a 4-star recruit coming out of that high school. And he had offers from some notable, really good basketball programs, not necessarily the Dukes or the Carolinas of the world, but he had offers from Arizona, who's typically a really good basketball program. They're dealing with some sanctions due to some, recruiting violations and all that, but they're typically really good. Baylor's now a perennial contender. He also had offers from, I believe, Oklahoma State, some other really good basketball programs. So he was highly touted. He committed to Texas, kind of the same situation with him and Greg Brown. They both committed because of their family history. And then, of course, his relationship grew with Shaka Smart throughout the recruiting process. So he committed to Texas, had a pretty good freshman season, averaged double digits in points. Good. And about a quarter of the way into his sophomore season, he diagnosed leukemia, which is a cancer. And so that was January 2018, about halfway into his sophomore year. So he was granted medical red shirts for 2018, which was at his actual sophomore season, his second year at Texas, and 2018-2019. So those years, both of those years, since their medical red shirts didn't count against his eligibility. So now he recovered, of course, from that. He came back middle of last year to actually playing with the team. So last year was his actual sophomore season, and then this year is his junior season. So he's been at Texas for 5 years, but he's actually only considered a junior because 2 of those years didn't count because he was dealing with cancer, and then, of course, he had a torn labrum. So he's also recovered from a pretty intensive hip surgery as well, along with a couple procedures on his foot. So just a pretty incredible story overall, what he's overcome. And he's been really, really good. And sort of the reason that Texas has stayed afloat here is like a top 15 team. He's averaging 19 points per game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists on 47% shooting from the field and 37% from 3 in Big 12 play, which is why I say that he should be first team all Big 12. So he's a big component to this Texas team. But the key in this game is going to be the front court of both teams. The reason I say that is because West Virginia is one of the best teams on the offensive glass. They rank 9th in the country in offensive rebounding percentage at 37%. They rebound 37% of the shots that they miss, and they get a lot of second chance opportunities. And Texas necessarily isn't the best at defensive rebounding. They're 146 in the country in defensive rebounding, which isn't, it's like middle of the pack in terms of D1. Like, it's not great at all, but it's not, terrible. But I think in order for Texas to really give them a chance to win this game, they're going to have to Greg Brown, Jericho Sims, and Kai Jones are going to have to get on the defensive glass and be active and not let West Virginia get a lot of those second chance points that they like to get and like to play off of. So that's going to be the key. I think Texas can do it. They're playing at home. I think the only thing I worry about is the facilities here at UT have been closed for the past couple of days, so they haven't had a lot of time to practice this week, which kind of worries me. And, a couple of weeks ago, they had the whole COVID situation. So it's been a while. They've only had a couple games together, like all together healthy the past couple of weeks. That worries me a little bit, but I think they can pull it out. And this would be big win for them to get them back into the top 10. I think they can do it. But maybe I'm just being a little biased. I don't know if you have any opinions.
Right. This was a hard game for me to pick. It like you said, it comes down to the front court matchups, but also a really interesting thing with West Virginia, their style of play, being that they do that full court press. Will Texas be disciplined enough to not turn the ball over and give West Virginia those transition opportunities that they tend to get? And that's the biggest thing. You don't know how Texas will come out, if they're going to be sharp. And against West Virginia, playing that style of play, I think that's actually probably the worst possible matchup to be coming off of a week where you couldn't practice, because you got to be sharp and on it to be able to just get it past half court. So I'm going to pick West Virginia, but the thing that I'd say is if Texas is able to get West Virginia to have to make most of their offensive possessions in the half court and not in transition, and as you said, finish those defensive possessions with a rebound the first time, then I would have to choose Texas. But it's so unpredictable to see how they'll come out.
Here's what I will say. I was going to originally pick them to beat OU on the road because I didn't foresee a scenario where they would lose to OU again, given that they lost at home to OU, but they were missing Jericho Sims, they were missing Courtney Ramey, they were missing a lot of their key. They were missing Shaka Smart. That reared its ugly head late in that game with some of the coaching decisions that were made. And they only lost by 1 point. So I was going to pick them to beat OU and then lose to West Virginia. But now, since it's just one game and they don't have that quick turnaround and they're at home, I'm picking Texas. But of course, I'm not going to pick against my team until tournament time. Then I get really serious and I'll be more objective, I guess. All right. So let's speed this up a little bit. 2 ACC matchups. I guess I'll just cover them 2 for 1. There's not really a whole lot to say. The first one is Louisville at North Carolina. I'm picking North Carolina. They're one of the blue bloods that I think will be in the tournament. A lot of these blue bloods won't. But, the Kentuckys, the Michigan States, the Dukes of the world. But I think Carolina has enough to get in. Now, they can't shoot, which worries me, come the tournament. They're a horrendous three-point shooting team, and they turn the ball over a lot, which also worries me. They're 290th in the country in three-point field goal percentage, 31%, and they're 240th in the country in offensive turnover percentage. They turn the ball over on a fifth of their offensive possessions. That also worries me, and they're inexperienced in the backcourt. But they have the size advantage in this game. Louisville has some good guard play, so I think they have the advantage there. But I think North Carolina has too much of an advantage in the front court. Guys like Garrison Brooks, the freshman center, Walker Kessler for North Carolina, who's 7'2", can stretch the floor, shoot threes. And our Armando Bacot, the sophomore, highly touted recruit from last year, I think you can expect them to dominate because – and that's how North Carolina is going to have to play this because their guards have been really inconsistent and they can't really – they're not a high-level team, scoring on the perimeter, shooting from the perimeter. So they got to play inside out. And I think their size advantage, even though Louisville is good defensively and their guard play has been pretty good, and that's the reason they're 11-4 and they're going to be in the tournament, I think North Carolina needs this win a little more than Louisville does. And I think their size advantage is going to show. So that's just my quick spiel on that. Virginia at Duke. Duke hasn't been good. They've won a couple games here in a row, but their 5-star freshman Jalen Johnson, power forward, their second leading scorer, their second leading rebounder, just opted out of this season for many reasons, injury, COVID, all that stuff. And so, in the NBA, losing that production might not be as big, but when you lose that production in college, it plays a much bigger role. And Duke's really struggled on the defensive end, and Virginia has been really, really good on the offensive end. They're going to be pissed off. They got pummeled at Florida State on Monday night, so they're going to be pissed off. And offensively, they've just been fantastic. 14th in offensive efficiency, 4th in effective field goal percentage. They're 14th in the country in offensive turnover percentage, which means they don't turn the ball over. And they're 7th in the country in three-point percentage. And Kihei Clark has really made that next step as a point guard, distributor, a playmaker, all that stuff. So I like Virginia and I like North Carolina to win on Saturday. But I will say I wouldn't be surprised if Louisville wins because they do have the better guard play. And Duke, I just don't see any way they can keep this game competitive.
Okay. I'm gonna have to concur with both of those picks. I haven't watched much SAC this year, but no, not SEC, ACC. I'm screwing up here. I haven't watched much ACC this year, but I've seen Virginia play, and I feel really confident about that game. I think they're not going to lose. They're coming off a emotional loss, and I don't think they'll have 2 straight letdowns. I think they're too good to have that. But the first game, Louisville and North Carolina, the reason I'm picking North Carolina is actually they actually just played recently on the 22nd. Wait, no. I think they played a few weeks ago, right? I think in Louisville, but I'm gonna pick North Carolina here. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been, with all these postponements, it's been hard to keep track, especially if you're not an avid college basketball watcher. I just think in some of these matchups that are kind of more evenly matched, like I think North Carolina and Louisville are pretty evenly matched teams as far as their rosters go. You just have to look for the small advantages in each matchup. And the advantage here, the bigger advantage here is the front court play of North Carolina. They have a lot of size. Louisville is a smaller team. And I think a great coach like Roy Williams is going to be able to exploit that. So, and they're playing at home. And they don't have a ton of fans, but they do have some. And they need this win more than Louisville does for their sakes for the tournament. So those are sort of the reasons why, but I won't be surprised if Louisville wins. I won't. But okay, the game of the week. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about Virginia. Their effective field goal percentage, 57.4%. That's 4th in the country.
Wow.
Really good. The 2 other times that they were top 10 under Tony Bennett in effective field goal percentage, one year they went to the Elite 8, and the other year they won the national championship. So just keep that in mind. When they can shoot, they're really dangerous. Just keep that in mind.
Right.
But what I am worried about is they're 0-3 against kind of the upper echelon of the country in the ACC. They had a bad loss to Virginia Tech. They had a bad loss to Florida State. And they had a really bad loss to Gonzaga. Now, granted, everyone loses to Gonzaga, but it was just awful. So I need to see them beat. I need to see them in the ACC tournament before I can gauge kind of where they're going to go in March. But that's just kind of something to keep in mind about Virginia going down the stretch. Okay, we'll finish off with the game of the week. Number 3, Michigan at number 4, Ohio State. This game's actually on Sunday. Ohio State, really good. Both these teams, as of now, would be 1 seeds, as far as I am concerned. The Buckeyes have 8 quadrant 1 wins, which means wins against the team's top 30 and RPI and net rating, which I won't get into that. But basically, they have 8 wins against really, really, really good teams. For those of you who don't understand that, that's the most in the country of such wins. And they're elite offensively. 122.6 offensive efficiency, 4th in the country. Yeah, they're solid. And Chris Holtmann, their coach, should be a leading candidate for Coach of the Year. He's really underrated. As far as Michigan goes, they were on pause for 2 weeks due to a COVID outbreak, but they're back. All Michigan athletics was on pause for 2 weeks due to some COVID problems, but they're back. They just beat Wisconsin last weekend. I think they play Rutgers tonight. They should win that game. It's a quick turnaround here to play a really good team like Ohio State on the road. I do worry about that, given that they haven't played in a while. They're still kind of getting back into the swing of things. They got to get back their chemistry and all that. But I think their size advantage, just like I said with North Carolina, is going to win out here. And they're a resilient team. They were actually trailing for most of that Wisconsin game, but then came back and won it in the second half. And a big reason for that was the power forward, the sophomore power forward, Franz Wagner, the brother of Mo Wagner, who now plays in the NBA, has been really good. And then freshman center Hunter Dickinson, if you haven't watched him yet, I'd say watch him because he's been really good, averaging 15 and 8 on 67% from the floor and 1.7 blocks per game. No player on Ohio State's roster is taller than 6'8", just like I said with Texas Tech and how Kansas should play inside out and how North Carolina has a size advantage. I think if these coaches are smart, if Juwan Howard knows what he's doing, and I think he does, otherwise Michigan wouldn't be where they are now, 14-1 record, aiming to be a number 1 seed, that they're going to be able to exploit this advantage. But won't be surprised if Ohio State wins because I do worry about the quick turnaround. 2 straight games on the road. Rutgers isn't necessarily an easy win. They're fighting for a tournament spot. They're kind of a bubble team. And this quick turnaround to go play at Ohio State, who's also a very good team, it worries me a bit, but I think Michigan should pull it out.
Right. If you look at Ohio State, they've won 9 of their last 10 games. So they're on a stretch where they're playing extremely well in basically the heart of their conference schedule. So that's really impressive considering on our last podcast, I believe we ranked the Big Ten either number 2 or number 1 among the best conferences in college basketball. So
right.
That's really impressive. And then Michigan, one thing is that they haven't played nearly as many games, it seems like, because of all the postponements and all of the COVID stuff. So they're still in a stretch where they're finding themselves as a team, but I think they're more well-rounded. As you said, Ohio State has a clear hole to where they have no true big men. So this could either go one of 2 ways. Either Ohio State is going to be able to switch the pick and rolls and defend that, and Michigan isn't going to be able to take advantage of those switches as good as they should, or Michigan's going to eat them alive inside, which is what I think will happen. I think Michigan is going to be able to get in the paint throughout the entire game, and that's going to be the deciding factor of the night. Whether Ohio State can hold their own inside, but I don't think they will. I'm going to pick Michigan.
It's a good pick. But those type of games are kind of unpredictable because you just don't know. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the selection committee values each sort of metric, given that all these teams have played different number of games for a different number of reasons. So it's going to be harder for the selection committee to gauge some of these teams because some teams have played a lot less games than others. So we'll just have to see. But if you're going to watch college basketball this season, start now because it's heating up.
All right.
And I guess I think we're like 25 days away from Selection Sunday. So we're getting closer and closer by the minute. So, but I think that's going to do it for episode 57. Apologize for the technical difficulties. We'll be back soon. There are lots of things that we still have to talk about. There was some trade today in the NFL that's, I guess, pretty notable, and other things going on as well. So we'll be back soon. Yeah,
we went a little bit over time here, but if you're still here, I guess comment the word comment Michigan. I don't know. Comment Michigan if you're still here in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. But yeah, that's gonna do it. I think we're gonna start doing that now just to see who's staying to the end or not. I mean, it might not do anything, but I think it's just a fun thing that we could add. But that's gonna do it. Thank you for watching. First of all, this was a little bit of a rough one in terms of the technical side, but we made it. And thank you for watching, and we'll be back soon for episode 58. Peace.